Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 5 of Talk Time with J. Allen Photography. And, hey, 5 episodes in, right? We're now into February, and that's pretty cool. Wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but pretty cool. So, episode 5, I know that it's just once a week, but, hey, it's still cool to be able to push out new content every week. Variety of content. Not only I'm doing photos, I'm doing the videos, and now I've got the podcast. And so I think that's pretty cool. I know that I'll be getting pretty busy soon, so I will see how this is actually really going to work when it comes to posting a whole bunch of new content. The February through May is really, really a busy time for me. And, so what I really need to do is queue up a whole bunch of these and get them ready to go. I've just been kind of lingering a little bit this year. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. We started the year on vacation, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was probably the first vacation that I've really been able to kind of not fully unplug, but very much almost fully unplug. And it was really nice to kind of reset. But the problem is I'm just kind of struggling to get back going, and I don't know fully what it is. I've been dealing with allergies and this head cold thing or whatever for a while. I think I probably actually did have COVID. And so I'm just kind of feeling like a little bit slower than normal. And so it's just, I don't know what it is. It's just a little bit slow. But, I've got a couple sessions that I've done this year already. And I know it's about to get rolling, so I need to kind of clear my head and get rolling with it. But anyway, I'm sort of breathing okay today. I've got like one side that's all right, but we'll see how it goes. So what about you? How are things going with you? How are things going with 2024 and your photography? Has it been slow? Have you been busy? What kind of what is it with you, and how is your year going so far? So something that I would like to really talk about this episode, and it's something that I've dealt with. I probably continue to deal with it. I think just recently it reared its ugly head again, probably as I was like thinking of the topic for this, but imposter syndrome. What is it? Why do we have it? I think a lot of people struggle with it, not just photographers. A lot of people struggle with it. Have you heard of it? Are you dealing with it? How did you get through it if you're dealing with it? Or, how are you dealing with it? Was it anything like specific that you did to kind of get out of it? Or, just, and then not just even to get out of it, but does it pop back up with you? Like it pops back up with me sometimes at some weird times. And, what do you think brings it on? It's a weird thing, and I don't know why I struggle with it. I don't know what it is. Is it self-induced? If it is, then why is it self-induced? And so that's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about today. I actually did a little bit of research on this because I didn't want to just speak my own mind on it, which I will speak primarily my own mind on it. But I did do a little bit of research because I wanted to have something behind what I was talking about. So imposter syndrome, I've dealt with it for sure. I dealt with it a lot more early on in my photography as I was starting to get better. Not when I first started, but, kind of that reset when I started getting things going in like 18, 19. And, I just was thinking about it just the other day and like, I still haven't. So it's not always crippling. It's something that kind of rolls along with me. Maybe I've learned how to deal with it a little bit. I don't know, but, it's definitely there, and it seems to maybe always be there. And I think it's just, I have to fight it constantly. And so I don't know if that's something that any of you photographers out there that listen to this podcast have had to deal with, but that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Even like right now, podcast, I'm not a podcaster. I probably still have really bad audio issues. I am just kind of struggling, trying to find footing in this thing. And why am I doing this? I don't have any right to be doing this, And so there's that whole imposter syndrome of, you're not even a podcaster, dude. Get off, quit speaking. Why are you doing this? And so, I put out content every week, and when I started doing the YouTube channel, it was kind of there, but I feel like I was able to get past it faster with YouTube than I was with photography. I don't know why, but it feels that way with YouTube. With photography, it's just always there. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I wrote a script up and I didn't actually even put that in there, but I don't know why I constantly deal with it, and again, I think it is a mindset. And actually kind of after some of the research that I did, it is definitely, a mindset that we have to adapt to or to change or to alter. And so that's kind of what I want to get into. But let's look into it a little bit. So these aren't like medical journals or anything like that, but like betterup.com says imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally, despite being high performing in external objective ways. This condition often results in people being or feeling like a fraud or a phony and doubting their abilities. So how does it show up? How does it affect us? And I think earlier in my career, in my photography career, it was there, as I mentioned. It kind of made me feel like even though I could see my work getting better, even though I could like tangibly experience that my work was much better than it was a year before or whatever, that objective, not subjective. I mean, there's definitely subjectivity to photography, but this was an objective way. You could tell that it was better, but yet something in my brain wouldn't allow me to believe that. And so even though I could see it, that imposter thing going on says, no, you're not as good as what your work is showing. Those are flukes, those are accidents. That's not real. If it was real, so yeah, I looked up the information on this and I kind of researched a little bit because I don't know anything about it. I just kind of thought, I think this is a neat topic to talk about. There isn't an official diagnosis to this. That was something that I came across, but a lot of people get it. Psychology Today at psychologytoday.com, it says that personality traits drive this syndrome. I wouldn't ever classify myself as a type A personality, but I think when it comes to my work, maybe I'm type A. I like my photography work, I'm type A. But not that this thing has anything to do with type A. It just says personality traits drive it. And so answers to that, the question the above, what brings it on? Is it self-induced? Does it pop back up? Or do you still deal with it? How do you get through it? This kind of tells me when psychologytoday.com says that it's personality traits that drive that syndrome, that definitely means that I am attacking myself. That is my own mentality. My own personality is attacking me. And it's nuts to me to think about. Again, I look at my work and I'm like, you know what? I'm so much better than I was 5 years ago. But yet now I don't deserve to be paid that much for a photo shoot. I can't charge that much for a photo shoot. What gives me the right to charge that much for a photo? That type of thing. And so, it's your own mindset is causing you, your own personality, your own inner workings are causing you to have these issues. I'm not a perfectionist. I don't think I am. Maybe in my photography, I'm more of a perfectionist. I know I'm a control freak when it comes to my photography. I like to control what it is I'm doing constantly as far as edits, lighting, everything. But, the site says that people who deal with the imposter syndrome struggle with self-efficacy, perfectionism, and neuroticism. Definitely, I don't think I'm a neurotic, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm any of those. But as I kind of read it further, it says that competitive environments lay the groundwork for imposter syndrome, and it allows to get that footing. And photography is a very competitive playground, right? Even though it shouldn't be, and so, maybe that drive to be better than this person, or not necessarily, I could do a whole podcast on comparison, because I think comparison can just absolutely kill you. And I did a episode early last year on YouTube about it, but it can really kill you. And it's definitely something that is negative, the wrong kind of comparison. And so maybe that comparison can really change and alter that competitive environment, which really will allow that imposter syndrome to set in and sink in and kind of get a hold and start to, be weird in your brain, So here in San Antonio, and I don't know how accurate any of this is. I don't have specific numbers or facts or anything like this. This is kind of some information that I learned from a friend, a photographer friend, mentor who's been in the photography game in this area for over 20 years. He teaches, he's got a school and everything. He says we have about 2 million people in and around the San Antonio area. And of that 2 million people, there's probably about 100,000 photographers. Now, that's not professional. That's just everybody that kind of considers themselves a photographer. So every Tom, Dick, and Jane, right, that have their camera, they're photographers. But then that also includes people like me who actually do this as a business. And so we're all kind of lumped in. Well, even at 100,000, even if that's accurate, if that is accurate, and there's 2 million, well, that leaves a ton of people for everybody, right? A ton of people for everybody. So there's plenty of people to go around. And again, I could be wrong on my numbers. Don't kill me on my numbers. But there's still plenty of people that want my work. And so why do I need to have this competition with this other photographer or this other photographer or that thing? I don't know how many high schools are in San Antonio. I do a lot of work in like 3 of them in the area. And there's some closer to me that I don't do a whole lot of work in. And then there's some further away that I somehow get some work in. I don't know. But, if I encroach on another photographer's school or whatever, why do they get mad at me? Or, if I don't even know about it, or even if I do know about it, if I start doing some work in that school, why is there that competitive nature amongst photographers? And, I don't get it, but I know for me that comparison, that competitive nature, that competitive environment, I don't think it's actually healthy for me as a person. And I think that is really where that imposter syndrome kind of got its foothold and started working on me and like being negative in my mind. And that's the areas that I think really I struggle with. I feel like, and I see it on a lot of Facebook pages. There's a lot of photographers that create this stupid competitive mindset, against other photographers. And there's just so many people to go around. You don't need to be like that. We probably really should rather build each other up than compete. And again, I know that there's some people that they've got to have this work. I get that completely. But I just think it's a competitive area that probably doesn't need to be that way amongst creative type people. We need to grow and benefit each other. And, there's so much that we can learn from other photographers, but yet we have to grab a hold of an area, and that's my area. And I, this is my market, and that, you don't need all that. And I think that's just a very easy way to allow not just imposter syndrome, but any negative thing to jump in and to really start killing you as that creative, as that photographer. And so, I think being competitive is good. You need to have some type of an inner drive to make you want to be better than you were the day before, because that's always the goal, right? Is to be better than you were the day before, but not at the expense of other people and not at the expense of your mental fortitude or your mental, aspects. Internal competition, I'm bad at it, and I've gotten better, but there's this part of me inside that I'm like, I'm better than this photographer. Why is this photographer getting more work than me? But I don't know how much that photographer is actually getting work. And again, I don't do this as much as I used to. I've gotten better with it, but it's that comparative environment that I've put myself in that has, I think, really just opened up the door for negativity to come in. And I shouldn't ever be thinking, that type of stuff for people who are achieving things, right? Why am I negative about somebody else's success? And I think it's because you're looking at it and you're like, well, because I'm not achieving that success. And that's that, imposter syndrome stuff sticking in there. And it just easily can weigh you down. And it can tell you on the inside, hey, you don't belong here. You're not good enough. But what makes you think that you can do this? And it's just sad to see, just this morning scrolling through some of my photography Facebook, local Facebook groups. Somebody's like selling all his stuff and he's quitting because he's just mentally drugged down, and it's really sad to see. And, it's pretty cool seeing some of the photographers trying to lift this person up. But I understand sometimes this game that we can play on ourselves. And that's the funny thing about it, is that a lot of times it's our own internal devices that are causing us to have these issues. It's not outward. It's not the economy. It's not this group or this group. It's us. And that is the real key, I think, to imposter syndrome, and understanding it, seeing it, and being able to adjust to it. When I was really trying to grow as a photographer and finally said, okay, this is my path, this is where I need to go, I put a lot of pressure on myself. A lot of pressure to get better. That's just, I guess, who I am. And again, I don't think that's bad. I don't think it's bad to have that internal drive. You've got to have that. Every pro athlete has an internal drive. Not that I'm equating them to me or me to them, but you have to have an internal drive to be able to get new places and to achieve new things, like to level up, right? You've got to have that. But I remember, as my work started getting better, my off-camera lighting was getting really good. I had this mentor that I was mentioning about with the school. He asked me to teach like a 3-day lighting workshop type thing for the school. And first of all, I was like completely blown away that he asked. Again, I think that imposter syndrome, like, you're not good enough. But I'm blown away. Like that's recognition, man. I've got this recognition from this photographer who's been doing this for 20 years. And he sees my work and he says, hey, I want you to teach my students what you're doing, because I think what you're doing is right. But in my mind, I'm thinking, dude, no way. There's no way I can teach. I learned it all on YouTube. I don't know any of the technical aspects of anything. I don't know, the inverse square law. I don't know any of that. I don't know, mainly what a lot of these numbers even mean. I just know what looks good. And so it just like blew me away that he even asked. And so I could have let that take hold. I could have let that control me, but rather than that, I went ahead and like, you know what? I kind of fleshed out a little bit more what he was asking for. And he did say, you know what? I want you to teach it as you do it, because I want them to see how normal, average type photographers are doing this, as opposed to, maybe the proper way, or, lecture taught photographers. And so that I could get behind. I'm like, okay, I can do that because I can tell you what I'm doing and I can explain what I'm doing. I still did go online and look at the inverse square law and try to understand it a little bit more for myself. And even when I went to go teach, I pulled up the video and said, hey, this guy's going to do much better than me at explaining it. So listen to this and we'll watch this. It was like a 10-minute video of the inverse square law, and I thought it was pretty good. But I think that was an opportunity really where I could have let that syndrome take hold and kind of squelch some of my growth, or I could take charge and take charge of that, and so that's what I did. And I'm really happy that I did. I've made some new contacts just through that, and I think that's really neat. Yeah, so I taught the class. I ended up loving it, and from what I've heard, that was one of their favorite classes, was my lighting classes, and I thought that was pretty cool. So he asked me to come back and do it again. It took me a long time as a photographer to get over the I'm not good enough mindset, or I'm not as good as what this is showing. It took me a real long time. I considered that a lot when I started the YouTube channel. Like I said, it didn't last as long as what I thought it would. I knew video. My videos definitely are not, Peter McKinnon, Matty Hopoya, or, even Manny Ortiz level. That's not my style at all. My work is my video work is very crude. It's straight to the point, I guess, and there's not a lot of that fluff stuff. And I would love for it to look better, but I knew going in what I could actually. Hey, my dog just joined me. My dog decided to join me, so I'm sorry. You're probably going to hear her. But so with YouTube, I knew kind of going in where I was at, and I didn't feel like I was going to try to be any different. And I didn't feel like I was going to try to impress anybody with my stuff. I just wanted to show my work in a different way. And so I think I was able to get around some of that imposter syndrome with YouTube faster than I was with my photography. And with the podcast, it's there. It's like, hey, you're not a podcaster. And I fully get that. This thing with the podcast is I want to try it. I just want to try it. I like talking photography, and this gives me another outlet to talk photography. It's not like I can sit there and just talk photography with my wife and daughter all day long. This gives me an outlet where I think some people will listen and hopefully subscribe and, maybe get something out of it. I don't know, but I don't feel like I'm dealing with imposter syndrome as much with the podcast or YouTube as I do with photography, even still to the day. With the YouTube, initially kind of my thought was people are going to think I'm fake. And I think that was my biggest worry. And again, I try to let people know as much as possible. I am not a technical person. I don't have all of that polished. I'm very unpolished when it comes to that, but I want to be me, and I want to show me and how I do things. And I do think it's actually coming off appropriately, and I think people see that and it makes me more believable for who I am, and I think that's a strength for my work. And so that's really kind of where I'm at with the YouTube channel. I absolutely love what I do. I don't try to be, at least at this point, I don't think I'm trying to be anything that I'm not. And so I really don't feel like I've had to deal with it that much when it comes to YouTube. But man, that photography, it just pops up. So, what is all that? That's a bunch of, I don't know, a bunch of mental, this again, it's that internal thing. So how do you get past it? It's hard because it's all internal. It's the exact same thing that's causing you to get pulled down is yourself. And so you now have to pull yourself out of it. And, maybe there's other ways. Maybe there's ways that people have dealt with it. And I would love to hear how other people have dealt with it. So if you have dealt with imposter syndrome, please feel free to leave a comment. I am very, very curious. I don't have all the answers. And the one thing that I really want with this podcast is, a lot of photography podcasts that I listen to, they're very polished. Most of the photographers that are doing these things are so polished as like they've been doing business for years and decades and whatever. And they've got all this, they're teaching these classes and they, making better photographers and making better business, all that. That's not me. When I actually really wanted to start my YouTube channel, I wanted it to be like the struggling photographer, because that's kind of like the grinding photographer. That's who I am. And that's what I want to come across. And that's where the podcast is. And so when I'm talking about this, it's because I deal with it. And I know that there's got to be other photographers out there that are dealing with the same thing. So I'm not saying I have all the answers. I don't know. And that's why I'm asking, what are ways that have worked for you? Because if you comment and leave something like that, maybe others can read those comments and help them. So that's what this is about, is helping other photographers, right? Helping us grow and be better. For me, I think I finally had to realize, and I did finally realize that my work had gotten better. I was getting recognized for my work, like teaching the class. People were seeing that my work was good. And so it was actually recognizing that and changing the mindset to believe that, seeing some of these improvements that I had made over the course of months, years, was like, wow, that, you are getting better. And I'm not trying to say that I'm there or I've arrived, but I'm definitely a lot better than I was like 6 years ago. And so to be able to see that and be able to recognize what you're doing, recognize the things that you have achieved, you have to focus on those achievements. You have to recognize those achievements. Those are ways that you can actually start to beat this imposter syndrome. You have to be able to, again, it's brought on. Imposter syndrome is brought on internally with our own personality, our own traits. So remember that when you're starting to deal with some of this stuff, you need to be able to see it, recognize it. That's probably the first way that you can actually start to get on top of it. It can be real hard to break, and it can really stunt your growth. But there's a couple ways that Psychology Today says that you can beat imposter syndrome. And so I just kind of want to close with this here real fast. The first one is reflect on your achievements. Again, let that sink in. So earlier it said, objective, not subjective. And so achievements, what have you achieved? What are you gaining? Do you have more clients than you did a year ago? If that's the case, that's an objective achievement, right? That's something that you can quantify. That's something that's visually there that you can see. So reflect on your achievements, see what you've been able to achieve. Share your feelings with others. This is number 2. Share your feelings with others. It says with loved ones or those who are close, like outside the setting of the imposter syndrome. So maybe not necessarily with another photographer, or I don't know. That one is a little bit cloudy to me, but maybe it's just with your spouse. Hey, this is what I'm feeling, and kind of go from there. Or a friend that is outside of the photography world, let them know kind of what's going on. But I think today we also are much more mentally aware, or we're much more aware of people's mental hardships, mental issues. And so I think this is a mental thing. And this is something that I think photographers probably should speak about a little bit more often. And so voice those things, talk to people about it. You don't need to complain the whole time, but talk to people about it, and maybe they can give you ideas for what they've done and what they've been able to do to get around it. 3, expect to make mistakes. Man, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. So expect those mistakes. And then find a mentor who's kind of traveled a similar path, and somebody who has maybe gone through it before. And I think that is a very big one right there. Find people that have traveled that path. Reach out to them, and maybe those are some people also that you can talk to about it. Hey, this is what I'm feeling, and maybe you can help me see it a better way or a better path around it. So remember, imposter syndrome, it's going to hit a lot of us. It may be hitting you right now. For me, it rears its ugly head every now and then. A lot of times it rears its head at like midnight when I'm trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden all these things just start bombarding my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Or like I wake up in the middle of the night, and then my mind just immediately starts running at a mile a minute. And it's a lot of this photography stuff just going in my brain, and I don't understand why it goes straight there, but that's that negativity, man. It will really stunt your growth if you let it. I think the most important is to recognize that that's there. Recognize that it's there is the first thing I think that you need to do. And then the ways that you can beat it, start working toward those ways to beat it. Reflect on those achievements. Talk to people about it. Expect that you're not perfect and that you're going to make mistakes, and find somebody else who's gone through it. So imposter syndrome, there it is. I didn't resolve anybody's life issues. I just talked about mine. So it's probably a little bit of a long episode. I apologize for that, but thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you made it all the way to the end. It's something that I struggle with, and so these podcasts are things that I want to talk about. I don't want to just talk about all the nice things and the wonderful things of my photography. I want to talk about the things that are real as photographers have to deal with them. And that's what I want to talk about. So thank you again so much for watching, or listening rather. And I'm still on the YouTube with these posts, so you might be able to watch it that way. But kind of go on the offensive with this stuff. Know that it can rear its ugly head. Be ready to react to it in case it does start to hit you. Next week, we're talking mixing the photography business with the photography passion that you have. So please come back for that. Again, I'm not going to be giving you answers. I'm going to be probably asking just as many questions. So thanks again for listening, watching, however you're getting this content. Thank you so much. Until next time, keep shooting.